We're trying out a new filming space today. Let me know what you think. Feels so weird to film it. Also, it looks like I'm fully naked. I promise I'm wearing a top. Your early 20s is a hard time. I struggled. I found it quite hard in places, but I read a few things that were really helpful. It brought me peace, solace, made me feel better, and also gave me some actual practical advice, and so I wanted to share those with you today. If you're new around here, hi, my name is Lucy Moon. You can subscribe below or hit the join button if you would like to support my channel, or just like the video. It is so appreciated. If you're really into these videos, there'll be a few in here that you probably have already read or heard of, and then there'll hopefully be a few in here that are fresh and new to you. I wanted to make sure I included some practical advice as well as some more like spiritual or like mental helpful advice. So the first book I want to talk about is Atomic Habits by James Clear. This book changed my experience of lockdown and just changed my approach to a lot of things. I ate it up. I think I listened to it as an audiobook actually, so I think it was only like 5 hours, super quick and easy read, but I could have honestly listened to 20 hours of this book. This book is all about building good habits and breaking bad ones, and I found the building good habits sections a bit more helpful than the breaking bad ones. But the whole book is an easy read and it is so useful and so motivating. I was in a hell of a slump when I read this. It was mid-pandemic and I just felt rubbish. And it was like early mid. We are still mid-pandemic officially. Not only did it help me learn how to achieve my shorter term goals, it also really helped me focus on my longer term goals and how I was going to get there over a number of years. And I might actually reread it soon. It was just so helpful. I'm quite skeptical of self-help books. I've read a few that have left me a bit, you know. So this was really refreshing. And if you only read one self-help book, make it this. We're going to keep going on the practical books here. One I would really recommend is Money, A User's Guide by Laura Waitley. This book was so helpful. I also read it in the pandemic and it really helped me get a better handle on my money. It explains money both in the kind of broader sense, and I know it's been published in the US and the UK. I read the UK one and it really helped me understand how money works in the UK in general, and then also how money works on the individual level in the UK. I found it so helpful, and it's definitely aimed at people who are in their early to late 20s, who are very new to finance and just really want to understand their personal finances better. I implemented pretty much everything Laura recommended and my finances look a lot healthier now. And also it's just quite an interesting read. Like, it's not too long, it's definitely not waffly, which I really appreciate. I've got no time for reading 300 words about the same thing over and over. So yeah, high key would very much recommend that book. And in our capitalist world, personal finance is kind of the key to personal freedom. Oh God, even saying that out loud makes me feel a bit ill, but it really does help you achieve like actually what you want to have out of life, whatever that may be. Being able to be financially a bit more free and feel a bit more sorted is kind of the key to a lot of that. And I don't know about you, but I wasn't taught it at school. Which is also outrageous. Like, why are we not taught how to manage our money in school? This video is varying wildly in light, so please bear with. I don't actually know if I've spoken about this book all that much, and you might not think it's applicable to you, but I would recommend every woman read this book. It's called Quit Like a Woman, and it's by Holly Whitaker, and I'll just say now, you don't have to be considering quitting drinking to read this book. It's not necessarily all about fully quitting. It's about reassessing your relationship with alcohol and substances in general, and addictions in general as well, and going in with an empowered mindset and understanding more what these things do to you on a mental health level, on a physical level, on a societal level, and a cultural level, which for me was the most revelationary part of the book. I could not believe what I was reading about big alcohol, and it really changed my mindset around drinking. I read it while I was still drinking, so in this like kind of 5-year period where I've been drinking again and trying to have a more mindful approach to alcohol. And yeah, it was a real eye-opener. I then reread it afterwards. I love Holly's unconventional journey with alcohol. I love how she talks about it, how she breaks it down, but especially the bits about societal and cultural and advertising, all of these little things we don't think about, but how these huge financial players are actually really incentivizing women and minorities to drink, and to drink more regularly, to spend more money on alcohol, the same way that big tobacco did. It's empowering to have that knowledge, and I hate the word empowering, but that's what it is. No matter what your relationship with alcohol is, even if you have the healthiest relationship with drinking, you don't smoke, you don't take drugs, you don't gamble, you don't do anything addictive at all, even if you're in that boat, I'd still recommend reading it. It will just open your eyes, no matter who you are, what context you're coming from. But if you're like me and you are a party girl drinker, then yeah, it's really interesting. And you're also, if you're like me and you succumb to romanticized images of alcohol, like for me, the thing that's hardest about not drinking is wine o'clock photos on Instagram. Like I see people having their pasta with their glass of rosé, and I just want to be them. Or their glass of orange wine, more realistically, like an orange wine or like a gorgeous bottle, something they got from Top Cuvée or whatever that company is called. Like all of that stuff, that makes me want to drink more than parties, more than social anxiety, more than anything else. I could talk about Quit Like a Woman for ages, but yeah, early 20s, you are looking at your relationships with all the things that impact you. I couldn't recommend it enough. The next book I have is a memoir. It is Becoming by Michelle Obama. I found this memoir just so refreshing. Politically, I'm very liberal and I don't necessarily agree with everything the Obama administration did, but I really loved seeing it from the First Lady perspective. Like Michelle comes from Chicago, she goes up through Washington, and this insight is just so interesting. And I really liked it because the First Lady, you have to be political and at the same time completely non-political in everything you do and you try and pursue. Just hearing not only her inspirational story of how she became the woman she is today, but also what she did and how her programs kind of impacted herself and also like America was really interesting. I think at the time I was reading it, I was just craving hearing more women's stories about how they got to where they are today and just looking for some inspiration, and it really provided that for me. Number 5 is The Body Keeps the Score. I feel like my early 20s involved a lot of learning about trauma. I don't really love talking about trauma as though it's just this like buzzword we use now, because it is, unfortunately. But learning about how trauma is stored in the body was really integral to my journey of learning about how people work and about empathy and about myself as well. I feel like we have a very shallow understanding of mental health, and Bessel van der Kolk kind of just shares his research really well, and it's a dense book, don't get me wrong. I didn't find it that easy to read, but having read it, I feel like I understand a lot more about trauma and about the way the body obviously processes trauma and how it affects people. Also, I've started realizing in recent months that a lot of science books don't actually use much science, and the studies they're citing aren't necessarily with the best of intentions, and there's often agendas, and there's real ways that you can manipulate science books for the mass market. And I feel like The Body Keeps the Score is the opposite of that. I feel like it's very true to itself, it's very honest, and is backed up by a man who has really dedicated his whole life to researching this. A podcast I'd really recommend listening to, actually, if you want to know more about these like kind of science debunked books, is the Maintenance Phase podcast episode on why we sleep. Ooh, that was an eye-opener. The next book's a bit controversial. I know people who love it, I know people who liked it, I know people who think it's rubbish. This book is The 4 Agreements. It's by Don Miguel Ruiz, and it's this philosophical framework for like understanding life. Sounds very relaxed. Yeah, and I'd say it is a lot about like freeing your mind, and it is an easily digestible book in that it's written really difficultly, like it's difficult to read, but it is tiny. So I bought this book when I was 21. It's a long story how I got this book, but it involves Kalani, which is a story for another day. But even just reading the blurb and understanding what those 4 agreements were really changed my perspective as a young adult. So the agreements are: be impeccable with your word, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, and always do your best. And particularly don't take anything personally really resonated and helped me understand myself and others better. And honestly, it really improved my relationships with people. There's something really freeing about knowing that everyone is looking through their own lens, and that everything that they understand of the world is only informed by their opinions, really. and you can't do anything to change that. While I found the book a bit weird to read, like it is a story basically, like a narrative, kind of like Sophie's World, if you ever read Sophie's World. So it does have a very distinct style. It is very short, so you can get through it quite fast. And the message that's in there is really helpful, and in my early 20s, like that was just what I needed to hear. The next book I would recommend is What a Time to Be Alone by Chidera Eguru, otherwise known as The Slumflower. This book, let me be fully frank here, Chidera is one of my friends and kind of like colleagues. Like we know each other through the influencer world. And I followed her for a few years, and what she was saying online in these long Twitter threads was revolutionary to me. I had put so much weight on finding a relationship, being malleable, being perfect, being a good girl, like fitting into the expectations of men and of just people in the world. And reading her words was so refreshing to me. It was like light bulbs constantly going off in my head. There's actually been a bit of backlash to this book and people calling Chidera's words kind of very basic feminism, like 101, you know, super obvious stuff. But these people who are criticizing it, I think, don't necessarily realize that what Chidera is saying wasn't in the discourse like 7 years ago. It was a real eye-opener for a lot of young women. And I know young people today who are still really in that mindset of wanting to people please, wanting to put other people first when talking about relationships, and also thinking relationships are the default. Like we all grew up on this diet of teen movies, rom-coms, get the girl, coming of age stuff, and so much of it's focused on romance. And Chidera's book just helped me reframe that and made me really appreciate being single when I was single. So while you might read it and think some of the advice feels a little obvious to you, to a lot of people it's not that clear, and I think it can be really, really helpful. So yeah, if you're fresh out of a relationship or you're feeling some pain in being single, I couldn't recommend this enough. It will take you an afternoon to read, and it just makes you feel so whole. Moving on, let's talk about Little Black Book by Ortega Uagba. Ortega will tell me off for saying her name wrong. So I read Little Black Book as I was just starting my business as an online creator, and oh, did I need to hear everything in that book. Things are scary and difficult and kind of alien to you, and there's a steep learning curve. But Ortega really breaks it down and makes it so much easier to tackle. I would say in particular, I would recommend this book if you are going into any creative industries, but I think it can probably be helpful as well all round. I think an honorary mention should go to Grace Beverley's Working Hard, Hardly Working. Her book is also perfect for when you're just entering the working world and you're just looking for some guidance, looking for some hand-holding. And it's great for like solid methods and tips that will help guide you through your first few years of work. I read it a little too old, I was 26, but I feel like I would have benefited so greatly from reading Working Hard, Hardly Working a little earlier in my life. When I was 21, I benefited so much from Little Black Book. I would refer to it all the time the first few years after graduating. It's also got the nicest cover. Like you can put that anywhere and it just looks so good. I've actually been on Ortega's podcast as well. If you'd like to listen to that, I'll link it below. I talked all about what it's like financially being an influencer, and I spilled some tea. And finally, when I turned 18, a very kind person gave me Oh, the Places You'll Go by Dr. Seuss, and it was the most comforting thing I could have read at that time. Life was changing a lot. I was leaving sixth form, I was going to university. Everything felt very turbulent, and there was just something so comforting about this children's story in like a nursery rhyme kind of format and these lovely pictures. I just kept this book with me for all of my life, really. Sometimes it's not about practical advice, sometimes it is just about reassurance and comfort. I think everyone might have a different version of this kind of book, but yeah, Oh, the Places You Go was mine. That is all the books. There aren't any fiction books in here, and I think that's because I'm not really much of a fiction reader. So if you have any fiction recommendations for people in their early 20s, do leave them below. And thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video.